All right, we're going to talk about one of those questions about the human body that, let's be honest, you've probably wondered about, but maybe never actually asked out loud. It's a piece of common knowledge, a bit of folklore, really, but what's the actual science behind it? Well, let's dive in and find out.
So here it is, the big question. Is it easier to get an erection when you're holding your pee? You know the situation. You wake up in the morning, you really have to go, and you notice something else is, well, also up. So is there a real connection there? Is holding it in some kind of biological cheat code?
And right off the bat, the answer is kind of yes. It can be. But wait, hold on, because this is where the whole myth gets busted. It has almost nothing to do with sexual desire or anything like that. The real story is way more mechanical and honestly a lot more interesting. Okay, so to really get this, we have to start by looking at the bladder itself and the, let's call it, accidental role it plays. And I'm going to stress that word, accidental.
It's really just simple physics. Think about it. Your bladder is basically like a balloon filling up with water. As it gets fuller and fuller, it starts pushing on everything around it. And what's right there? Well, things like the prostate and this whole complex web of nerves down in your pelvis. That physical pressure can literally just nudge the on switch for reflexive erection. It's a purely physical thing.
And this is the most important part to understand. What we're talking about here is just a physiological reflex. You know, like when a doctor taps your knee with that little hammer and your leg kicks out, it's an automatic, involuntary response that is completely, totally separate from genuine sexual arousal, which is a complicated thing tied to your brain and actual desire. One is just a nerve getting bumped. The other is a whole different ballgame.
So let me be absolutely 100% clear here. This is not a life hack. This is not a trick. Holding your pee does not increase your sex drive, and it is definitely not a healthy thing to do. In fact, if you make a habit of it, you're setting yourself up for some pretty nasty health risks, like urinary tract infections and even long-term bladder damage. So, just don't.
Okay, so that explains why you might notice this when you have to go. But this whole conversation naturally leads us to an even bigger, much more common mystery, the whole phenomenon of morning wood. And this is the next logical question, right? You're thinking, okay, if a full bladder can trigger this reflex, and I always wake up with a full bladder, well, case closed. That must be the cause. It seems so simple, but nope, the truth is a little more complicated than that.
And the answer is a big, resounding no. A full bladder is not the direct cause. At best, it's a supporting actor in this whole production. The real star of the show, the one driving everything from behind the scenes, is actually your brain and your sleep cycle.
Let's get scientific for just a second. The official medical term for this is nocturnal penile tumescence, or NPT for short. This is a totally normal, healthy part of the male sleep cycle, and this is the key. It happens whether your bladder is full or totally empty. In fact, the regular occurrence of NPT is actually a really good sign of healthy nerve function and blood flow.
So here's how it actually works. When you hit REM sleep, that's the deep, dreaming phase, your brain gets super active. A part of your nervous system called the parasympathetic system takes over. You can think of this as your rest and digest mode. And one of the things it does, completely on its own, is trigger this erection reflex. This happens multiple times a night. And it just so happens that your very last REM cycle of the night often lines up perfectly with when your alarm goes off.
So let's put it all together. The erection is already happening, thanks to your sleep cycle. That full bladder, with all its physical pressure, just might make that already existing erection feel a little more firm or more noticeable when you wake up. Think of it as an enhancer, not the cause.
So, if the science is this clear, then why is this myth so incredibly widespread? Why do so many of us believe that a full bladder is the #1 reason for this?
It all comes down to the perfect storm of coincidence. Look at what's happening. 1, you're waking up at the end of a REM cycle, so a natural NPT erection is already in progress. 2, you haven't been to the bathroom in 8 hours, so of course your bladder is full. You experience both of these feelings at the exact same moment, and your brain does what brains do. It tries to connect the dots. It assumes one thing caused the other. It's a classic case of correlation, not causation.
Okay, I know that was a lot of neurology and anatomy. So let's just recap everything and put it all side by side to make it absolutely crystal clear.
This table really breaks it down perfectly. You've got 2 different scenarios. For an erection while you're awake and just holding it, the cause is a nerve reflex from physical pressure. The bladder is the direct cause. But for a morning erection, the real cause is your REM sleep and your nervous system. The bladder is just an optional extra that can sometimes enhance the feeling, but it is not necessary at all for it to happen.
So if you take away just one single thing from all this, let it be this. The core engine driving morning erections is your sleep cycle and your nervous system. The bladder, it's just an occasional supporting character that sometimes wanders onto the stage. It's not the star of the show.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Our bodies are just full of these fascinating, interconnected systems that we don't always understand. This whole thing is a perfect example of how we can mistake two things happening at once for cause and effect. And it just leaves you with this one last question. What other secrets of our own bodies have we completely misunderstood all this time?